Hi, and welcome to another edition of Race Reviews with Billy and Sam. This one from Spain for Mallorca, Challenge Mallorca. We are currently on the island of Mallorca, so I think this counts as our first island review. Does that count?
I don't know. Do we review a race in the Canary Islands?
We may have. So our second island review. So this should be a fast race review. This is I'm going to call it a smaller race. The highest number I saw was 900 and a little bit of change.
On our race packets, it said whatever number out of 1,000, but the first 200 numbers were reserved for pros.
Yeah, so the first 100 were guys, and the second 100 were girls.
Okay.
So very interesting. Lots of pros for the size of the race field.
Yeah.
Challenge, of course, puts on a great race, and this one is going to be no exception.
Sure.
But let's go over what we did. So we'll go ahead and through the check-in process all the way in.
Check-in and transition, sure. So check-in was pretty standard. They assigned your number long before you got here, and that number was already assigned in transition to on the bike rack. So it was just luck of the draw of where you got your bike rack. They did do transition where you exited one way and you came in the same way, but they looped you all the way around to the back. So pretty much no advantages to anywhere in transition. They had 6 bikes per rack, so that was pretty good. I mean, plenty of room. It was bagged transition, and you dropped off your bag.
The bag. This is the bike bag.
Yeah, it's like
an actual string. We've gotten these from races as their bag, and there was a bike run and
so not the plastic throwaway bags. These are actually pretty decent string bags. They also gave you a full bike cover to put on your bike. I did not put it on my bike, but my bike had dew all over it in the morning. I was thinking that it wasn't warm enough to get dew on it, but anyway, so they gave you the bike cover for a reason. It's reusable. Made out of a pretty good material. They gave you a nice backpack.
Really
we
nice.
hadn't got we got at the last challenge race in Austria. We got
in it.
Yeah, we got a nice dry bag.
Very nice dry bag.
That was the nicest dry bag that we've gotten all year, and this is probably the nicest backpack we've gotten all year. And
Easily.
They did not give out hats, which is a shame. I mean, you would think Challenge would give out hats, but they don't. The check-in, we checked in on Thursday. The race is Saturday. You can check in on Friday. They were very well organized. The village is kind of near transition. I mean, within relatively easy walking distance.
Yes.
You did have to drop off your bike, like I said earlier. You dropped off your bike on Friday. The drop-off was 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., which is really late.
Yeah.
And then, you got anything to add for check-in and transition?
No. Check-in was a lot smaller than typical as Ironman or Challenge that
I
we
wonder
had.
if it's just because people get here early and so there's not really a line.
Could be.
I mean, there wasn't a line for us to check in.
No.
There were points where I saw a line, but it was only like 4 or 5 people long. One thing to note about transition, they took some old turf, like artificial turf from a soccer field, and covered the entire sandy transition with this turf.
Really great.
Yeah, it made it a lot better.
Easy to walk on, easy to run on.
Yeah, it was a perfect use of that because it's recycled material too.
Coming out of transition on the bike were stairs, and so they had put on a ramp, and then they put a red carpet on the ramp. They did a very nice job with what they had. Coming back in on the bike, I chose to carry my bike down the stairs. I slipped a little bit on it.
People were struggling. Going up, it was fine. I didn't see anybody struggling going up. There's a handrail too, so you can kind of have your bike in one hand and pull up the handrail because it's pretty steep.
Yeah.
Coming down, we did see people struggling, and so we each just carried our bike down the steps, which was fine. There's a handrail for that too.
Yeah, that's the only transitional note that I have. Everything else was.
All right, so moving on to the swim.
So, of note, the straps that they used for your timing chip, were the cheapest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, bring your own if you have it.
Actually, bring your own. We saw some Ironman branded ones. If you have one from another race, bring it, use it. You will appreciate it. So, pro tip: bring your own
and it's a strap that has the loops on one side and the hooks on the other. So one side's rough and kind of smoother on the other side. Make sure you do the smooth side nearest your skin. Otherwise, you're going to lose some skin in the race.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's not the end of the world if you don't do it that way. But that's if you're figuring out how to put that on yourself. Put the soft side on.
Soft side towards anything that's going to rub.
So on to the swim.
The swim is I'm going to call it out and back. It's basically a giant U. This was not self-seated, and this is the first time we've not had self-seated this year. No, that's not true.
There's
Challenge.
there's been some other.
So Challenge is still doing the group starts or the age group starts. So I started with my age group. Billy started 6 minutes behind us. They ran very smoothly. You did need to make sure that you came through the proper pattern because they tagged you in fairly early in that gating system. Did you walk over those mats or did you sneak under the thing?
No, I walked over the mats.
Yeah. So
They just wanted to make sure they knew who was on the swim course.
Mm-hmm. So make sure that you hit that buzzer.
It's like a little zigzag thing or whatever. Just go through the whole zigzag thing.
This was wetsuit legal for us. It was not wetsuit legal for the pros, which was interesting.
Yeah.
But 23 Celsius, I don't actually know what that works out to Fahrenheit.
It was kind of chilly. It felt chillier than that for whatever reason.
So wetsuit legal for us. Clear, crystal clear water. It's really pretty. I can't encourage that enough. Plenty of width. The way out, you went through, you were directed, there were 2 triangular buoys, and you were supposed to swim between them. This was a difficult sighting course. There were buoys that weren't related to anything. There were those buoys that you wanted to swim between. I'd love to see Challenge, kind of tighten that up a little bit. Especially we had a lot of waves, and so going out, it was difficult to see. You had plenty of width.
I wouldn't say difficult. I'd say awful.
Okay.
I mean, it was they had the 2 buoys that you swam through, which were about 300 to 350 yards off the coast. The next sighting buoy was at 0.6 miles for the turnaround. You got to do better than that. There's got to be some sighting buoys along the way because, I mean, I was pretty much just sighting off other people. And finally, when I was sighting off other people, and they must have been sighting off one of the other orange buoys. There were 4 orange buoys at the end that you kind of went around. And as we got closer to the end, one of the paddle boarders came over and made us move to the right because they were sighting. I was following them, and they were sighting off the wrong buoy. But, I mean, it was so hard to see anyway. You got to do better than that. And there were additional buoys out there for either boat hookups or something that had nothing to do with the race, and so you didn't want to sight on those.
Yeah.
I ended up sighting on the great big tall building on the way back, and I went just to the left of that, and that actually worked out. But
just fine.
I shouldn't have to sight a building on a race course.
No, not from over half a mile away.
No.
So it's an out and back simple. It's a simple swim. This could have been. I mean, the buoys that they had were massive.
Oh yeah, big buoys.
So just investing in some smaller, medium buoy, along the way buoys would be certainly recommended. So you got to rank for the swim. Banana score for the swim.
I mean, the course was fine. It was closed. They kept all the boats away. There was plenty of room for people, but. Man, I gotta get a 5. You gotta take off. I gotta take off 2 points for the sighting.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm gonna go 5.5 on this swim.
Could have been so much better.
It could be a fantastic swim. That could be an ocean 6.5.
I mean, they started at 9 a.m., so I'm wondering if that had something to do with the tide because I didn't feel a real current going out and I didn't feel a real current coming back in. I mean, there may have been something little.
I felt like a little bit coming in, but not bad.
But it seems like because sunrise was at 8, so they could have done that. But I'm thinking that they chose the time based on the tide.
Based on tide, I'd buy that. So onto the bike.
Okay, so the bike is a 2-loop course, 45 kilometers each round, and be careful when you look at the race guide because the race guide is 45 kilometers. So Sam's looking at it, he's like, oh, this race is only 1,500 feet to climb, or 15, it was 500
meters.
550 meters or whatever. So I was like, okay, well, this is going to be a decent,
nice easy day,
decent day or whatever. And then he got to looking at it, and he was like, oh, that 550 is just for one loop.
Yeah.
So you went from 15 or 1650 feet of climb to 3,300, and you're like, it's going to be a different day. But basically, it's 4 hills. They're not awful hills. I did the first 5 miles in 19 minutes, and the first 4 miles of that was uphill. So, big difference between this week and last week when we had the big headwind and couldn't get any kind of headway. I actually had a bike wreck and messed up my watch, so I don't even know how fast I went.
Yeah, this was a slow race for us. Sorry, I was trying to find our.
So anyway, it was you go up a relatively steep hill. It was the worst of the hills because there were some switchbacks in there that you went up. Then you kind of went down, and then you kind of went out and did an out and back. And the out and back was kind of in a canyon up a valley or whatever, and so it was a long, winding, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 mile through here. You make a U-turn and come back down the exact same thing, go around, and it was just rolling hills after that, rolling to flat. You make the loop and you come back. So aid stations, the first aid station was at 5 miles. The second aid station was at 25 miles. Keep that in mind. First aid station, 5 miles. Second aid station, 25 miles. You did hit those twice, so you had four aid stations. But think about it. The course is 28 miles, so the next aid station was 8 miles away. After you hit the 25-mile station, then the next one was 8 miles, and then it was another 20 miles before you hit them. So just keep that in mind that there are 4 aid stations. But you're going to want to hit that first aid. Normally you're like 5 miles. There's nothing I need.
Yeah.
But go ahead and hit it anyway because it's going to be 20 miles before you get to the next one.
Garmin says it was 38:51 on the old climb.
Man, I got to get me a new watch.
And an average of 16.8, so a little bit of a slower bike for us.
Yeah, but still, it's much better than the 15 or whatever we averaged at the last race.
Yeah, certainly.
So that's pretty good.
The road condition?
I'd say above average. There were a few, I'm not going to say great roads. There were mostly great roads. There were a few places where it was kind of rough or whatever, and then there was one section where you went on this like greenway that was, it wasn't gravelly, but it was the concrete with the gravel, like the pebbles in it or whatever, and so
on an incline. That whole thing was basically uphill.
When you go, this is on you to think about this, but as you exit that, it's only a half a mile, maybe. It's not that long that you're on it, but when you exit, you can cut the corner. When you cut the corner, you go through a fair amount of sand, so your tires get covered in sand. This is where I had my bike wreck, because the next hill is the steepest downhill that you're going to be on all day. And as I was braking, my back tire slid out from up under me. I don't think it had to do anything with the sand, but the sand could not have helped. So just go a little bit wide around that, and you avoid the sandy area.
We had some showers, sprinkles. There was enough rain to make the road slick. Between our first and second loop, and so there was a significant difference in our downhills on the second loop because the roads were wet. There was a section through the town where we're riding on some type of marble or travertine or something
that's smooth, and when it got wet,
it was just slick. You could see it.
It V'd toward the middle, and that was kind of the gutter, and the gutter had water in it. So you wanted to stay on either side, and once you pick the side, you stay on that side. Whoever wants to pass you, that's just up to them. You're not on it. That's probably another half mile section or whatever. But still, you be careful of the rain, because I know there were some people that wiped out on that.
Yeah, there was coming out. There were 3. It was basically a 3-time switchback. That was the steepest part of the whole thing, and it was not super long. You had very reasonable. Opportunity for break or whatever. They designed this course fairly well.
Yeah, I loved the course. There were some hills for sure. The rain didn't help very much. I don't know that they should change it. Lots of turns.
Yes.
Ton of turns,
but you had a volunteer at every single turn pointing, hey,
closed course. I was alone for for a good little while, and I was kind of like, am I on the right spot? They had arrows on the side, so every once in a while you saw an arrow, and you're like, okay, I know that. I mean, I don't know that you could have gotten lost on there.
Thank you, Challenge, for that. What he's saying is there were arrows on. There wasn't even a place for a turn, but it was just a nice reinforcement arrow.
Straight this way. It's just like stuck on a street sign.
You're on the right way, yeah. So Challenge, kudos for that. So you have a score on this?
Yeah, I mean, the bike was kind of scenic. It went through some towns. It felt a lot like Austria. It wasn't as scenic as Austria, and it didn't have as many spectators as Austria for sure. But, I mean, there were some people in the towns that were cheering, and you kind of wove through those little towns. The speed humps, so there were a fair number of speed humps, but these you could hit really fast. They were not, the ones in Lanzarote or whatever, you were going to get air if you hit those too fast. These, as you're coming downhill, you could hit those, and it was fine. There were some areas where it was hard to pass. That out and back, especially with some of those tight turns and stuff, you're going to have luckily I got out of there before the pros came by.
Yeah.
But if the pros had passed me on that, I mean, I know they probably had to have been annoyed with whoever was in there.
Yeah.
So.
So you go to the top of the hill, you have an actual U, and then you come back down. So you Challenge owned both sides of the road, except that you're going up one side, and it's fairly twisty. It made for a fun descent, except you had bikers coming the other way against you. So it was a little tight in there,
and they were pretty narrow lanes too.
Correct.
I mean, it wasn't a super wide lane. But I mean, you're asking for a score. I'll give it a 6. Not quite as high as Austria, but it was a good bike course.
I'm with you on the 6. I had a lot of fun. Wish it hadn't rained. That's not the race's fault. I think we could have had more fun. But yeah, 6 on that for certain.
All right, moving on to the run.
So the run is a 4-loop course through downtown.
Whatever, Peru.
We can't actually pronounce it, but this city.
Peguera. Peguera?
This course is I'm going to give it a spectator 7.
Oh, yeah.
This is the most spectator-friendly course I have ever done. This is a great place to bring the family to see you race. But you come out of transition, and then you don't hit that first aid station for probably a mile and a half. There's a little bit of a longer run, and then plenty of aid stations because you're hitting them 4 times.
They did have an aid station with just water, but they had an aid station right out of transition.
Out of transition, yeah, that's fair.
It was just water, but
lots of hills. This is I would have to look it up. According to Challenge, I think it was 900 feet or so of
they weren't
None
awful
of
hills.
the hills
it was just
were
up and down. There were a lot of U-turns where you went up a street and then you made the turn and it was downhill down the street. So there was a lot of that.
Reasonable roads. We saw the Mallorca DOT out fixing potholes on the run before the race. They were also painting the light poles.
Oh, they were painting the lines on. I saw them painting the lines on the thing too.
So yeah, the community puts on a really great race here. They clearly care very much about the race. Tons of spectators. Once again, people are fairly serious. You start out, and I got actually a little confused. Coming out of transition, you came down.
And you come right to the finish line.
Right, it looks like you're going through the finish line. You take the left, and then there's an opportunity to go to the finish line, or you take the shortcut and stop short of the finish line and go out, and that's where they give you bands. So their counting was good.
You got one different color band for each lap that you did. You had to pass that. You had to pass the finish line 5 times. The 5th time you got to the finish line, you crossed it. But that was pretty tough. I mean, the good news was that you had plenty of spectators out there and people cheering, and they didn't really know when you were coming up. I mean, I guess they could look at your arm and see what band you had. Yeah. They were cheering for everybody.
They were having a good time.
So it was a 4-loop course, so you just I mean, it was 3 point whatever miles 4 times. The lots of places, and the run was on the street too. They closed the street and you did it, so the spectators had all the sidewalks for all the shops. You weren't competing with any of that.
Yeah.
They did send you down to the boardwalk area that was in between the beach and the restaurants, but there seemed to even be plenty of room for people to walk on that too. There were a couple of times when people weren't paying attention, but for the most part, there was plenty of room for everybody to run.
Absolutely.
And the spectators to walk. So
we ran at points to a stride, and there was plenty of room to pass. So we didn't have any issues it didn't feel narrow or have any issues with that. Did not have issues with pedestrians on our run. This is. I mean, anything that you do 4 times is going to get a bit repetitive, and so it gets there.
And you have to pay attention to other people's wristbands to see if there's somebody that's in front of you or behind you or whatever. I mean, pretty much you're just going to have to run your own race. If you can sight off somebody in front of you and pass them, or people pass you. I mean, it's one of those races where there's a bunch of people on the course at the beginning, and then as you go along, well, for us, as we went along, it got fewer and fewer.
So,
you got a score on the run for you?
This run, I've got to give a 5.5. I would like to see them kind of elongate the course or change up something. Maybe
you just didn't like the repetitive.
Yeah, lots of hills. We just kept going up hills. And you're on an island. There's lots of hilly areas. But we got to run, one of the segments is along the beach, and it was gorgeous. I just wish we could have done more of that. But certainly, even when it was hilly, we got lots of shade. It's 5.5 on the run.
I'm gonna give it a solid 6. I mean, I'm not sure that I would ask them to change it. It is repetitive, but that makes it so much more spectator friendly.
It's easily.
They don't have the room like Augusta does, where you go up and down and up and down. Mm-hmm. I think they did it how they could have. Lots of officials out on the run course. I don't see. I mean, in Europe, they do that because they were like that in Lanzarote too. So be prepared to see a lot more officials on the run course. I guess they were. I don't know. I think they must have been looking to make sure we were going up the full distance to around the cone or whatever. I don't know what they were doing. Whatever they were doing, there's a bunch of them.
No idea.
All right, so finish line.
Finish line was good. It's a little spread out. It's interesting. So you finally get to make that little extended and go to the finish line. There were stands. Lots of, once again, spectators are highly encouraged. This is during COVID. There's stands. There's plenty of people. Lots of opportunity for that. But you cross the finish line, and they had special needs kids putting the medals on people, which was really cool. Okay. Yeah. So that was a blast, and they were super excited to do that, and so it made it even more special. But you cross through the finish line, and they had food for you. They had
a lot of options for food.
Yeah. It was pasta, but they had spaghetti and ziti and rice. They had beer. They had lots of food.
Pizza. It wasn't American pizza.
Yeah. Then they had like a vegetarian section over there, and there was pizza, sandwiches, goodies, lots of food, lots of opportunity, plenty of tables, and you're all outside enjoying the beautiful weather
in the shade.
Yeah, and protected for the athletes. This was just athlete-only areas. But yeah, so it's a really good finish line experience.
So my only qualm, I suppose, with the finish line is they got to have a medical tent. So this is like I said, I had a bike wreck. So this is my arm, but my leg's just all tore up. And I'm exiting the finish line and asking for medical, and they send me to this. It was like an EMT or whatever. And she had a bag full of stuff, but it was it was like I was in the wake.
It was you're in a little chute leaving.
Yeah.
And the medical's taking up half of that chute. Yeah, maybe a better place for that.
Yeah, I mean there needed to be a 10 or something better.
Yeah, I assume they were wanting to be close to the finish line just in case or whatever.
And they were tending to a lady that was right there. But they gave me everything that I wanted. I kept asking for more stuff so that I could go back and take a shower and tend the wounds to myself. Because I mean, if they would have done it, it would have all had to come off in the shower. And they realized that, and so she sprayed like the Neosporin stuff or whatever on each little pad that I was going to put on, and then put it back in the package for me to take with me. So that was nice. I mean, it was. I mean, they knew what was up. So that was good. That's really. I mean, the food. I mean, was really good.
That was solid.
I mean,
and a great opportunity. European races are not like American races where people are talking and friendly, probably because you have a dozen languages happening. But post-race, everybody was super friendly, wanted to talk, had a blast. So if you do the race, certainly worth hanging out and getting to know some of your fellow racers. They're on the race course. They're very serious. They're taking this seriously as a race. We don't, but as soon as they're done, they're great.
So give me an overall rating for the race.
I gotta give this race a 6.
Okay.
It's a really good race. It's fun. I said at the end, I was like, once is probably enough. It's worth doing. Great destination race and a beautiful area. The town is obviously a 7. Very supportive of the race, and they've done everything. But certainly has some opportunity for growth.
Yeah, I'll give it a solid 6 too. I mean, that's I think that's what this race deserves. I mean, certainly put it on your list of races if you're wanting to go to a vacation area, have plenty of family stuff to do, and then be able to do a race. This is it.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for next time. We'll have a double coming up. Waco and North Carolina. It's the old Beaches to Battleship. So stay tuned. Thanks, guys.